My name is Benjamin Rueck. I have been a climber for like the last 17 years. A big part of my focus is doing first reascents of big walls, and I've been lucky enough to travel around the world and go ahead and do that, which has been pretty rad. Let's see, my experience has generally been pretty good, but I've had some weird moments where I was curious whether I was going to make it out or not, which is always fun. But what that did was it created like a huge knowledge base and experiential practice to go ahead and like commit to making red points occur quicker and or just bypass the whole on-sighting thing because I'm pretty trash at it. I'm just really good at like hitting my head against the wall, which I think is why we're all here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the top of this, if you guys are okay with that, and I'm gonna have John go ahead and introduce himself.
John Cavaniss. I've been climbing for about 10 years, combination of trad, some multi-pitch, bouldering. I've not done any project work though, so this kind of interested to hear more about it.
Okay, very excited about that. Luke?
Sorry for being on mute earlier.
No, you're fine.
About 20 years in mostly single pitch boulder sports. I've been up in air, and I'm getting more and more of the last couple of years as I'm getting older into trad and multi-pitch.
Oh, well, I might be able to help you out with a little bit of that. Scott, I'm just letting you know we're doing introductions right now. So we're just kind of introducing ourselves. Just for a quick refresher for you guys. Scott, my name is Ben Rueck. I'm a professional climber. I've been climbing for about 17 years, and my focus is like trad, big wall, and first ascent. So sorry for not getting you on like the main introduction, but and technology. Let's go ahead. Brian, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So I've been climbing for about 8 years. I think it was John. I'm pretty much about the same as him, kind of coming in from the trad side and pretty new to projecting. I had one all ready to go this fall, and then wildfires kind of canceled that. So
where are you based out of?
Fort Collins.
Oh, nice. I'm in Grand Junction, so we had our burning happen already.
Yeah, it's just like never ending, but so.
No, it's not. Okay. Let's see. So Luke, I had you introduce yourself. Eric, do you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Eric. I've been climbing about 12 years. Was primarily into like multi-pitch trad for the first couple years, and then started getting into sport, and in the last couple years more bouldering. So I didn't try too hard for the first couple years, and now I feel like I'm starting to try hard, and I've never really projected anything, so I'm psyched to push my grades a bit.
That is definitely a very good way to start that. Let's see, Jason, did you already introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Jason, and, and yeah, I've been so I've done some like multi-pitch trad probably 20 years ago, and then I was out of climbing for a bit, and I've been doing much more like gym and sport recently, and I definitely want to get back into doing more project type climbs.
Perfect. Kat or is it Kat or Kate?
It's Kate.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
I've been out of rock climbing for a little while. I tend to ice climb, but I'm interested in getting back into it and just interested in what you have to say.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I won't be able to give much information on ice climbing. I loathe the ice cold, so I'm not a big fan of that. But I do appreciate it and respect what you guys do because that shit's terrifying. Michael, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, so I've been climbing for probably about 8 years now, mostly sport. I've never really projected anything. Usually it's just going to the crag and, trying a little bit and then giving up. So yeah, I'm interested to actually start and try hard on something.
And Scott, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hey, I'm Scott. Sorry about being a little late at a meeting, but so I've been climbing for about 6 years. Was never really interested in too much try hard or anything like that, but I've been working with the coach for the last 3 months, and um, I've been finding it. The harder you climb, the more stuff you can do outdoors. So, been pretty excited to start pushing myself a little bit more.
Amazing. Perfect. It sounds like all of you guys are kind of primed and ready for the idea of just like red point tactics and projecting. So that's really good. I guess first and foremost, well, I'm gonna say thank you to the American Crag Classic Series and the American Alpine Club for allowing this to happen this year, because it would have been very easy just to be like, COVID, we're out. Bye. So if you guys, I know this is kind of like a shameless plug, but if you guys do have any donations or anything, then it would be very much appreciated, especially if you're like a member or anything else like that. I mean, that's a donation on its own. So I usually have their stuff just in case their insurance is comprehensive. So if I'm traveling, I don't have to pay like hundreds of thousands of dollars if I get screwed over and have to get a helicopter out, which is pretty cool. Not a lot of people know about that. Okay, so let's go ahead and break into the art of the project. And did all of you guys get that email that I sent you by chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Yep.
Okay, so did anybody not get it? I guess that would be a better question.
I did not.
Okay. So hey, basically the email was just a small introduction of me, but also it was basically having the idea of like goal setting and like what you're wanting to achieve, especially by like trying to take this project clinic. So as we're going through these slides and as I go through my presentation, then what I want you to do is be kind of like having in the back of your mind, like why you're taking this clinic, what appeals to you about projecting, and more importantly, where you would like to take it in a short-term, medium-term, and long-term goal. And like long-term is like 10 years, like medium-term is like 5 years, and then short-term's anywhere between like 6 months to a year from now. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and attempt to do screen sharing. And you guys, we have this this chat thing that we have going on in the corner here. So as we're going through stuff, it would be perfectly acceptable, and actually really I would like you guys to do this, to just write down any questions or like things that pop into your head so that we can use that for our discussion afterwards. My goal is to make my presentation 10 to 15 minutes, like something like half the time that they say on there, so that we can actually more or less go through like your guys' concerns or like what you would like for tips and tricks. Does that sound pretty good to y'all? You can thumbs up, we can also unmute stuff and like just talk. It's all good. Like I really want this to be an interactive and positive course for everybody, and I will try not to talk all the time.
Sounds good.
All right, let's find this bad boy. All right, so did that share by chance to everybody?
Yeah, we've got it.
For sure.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with, my whole climbing career has been based off of projecting. I am trash at on-siting, which means it takes me a long time to get things done. The longest standing project I've had so far has been 2 years, where I gave a route over 150 goes, which means I fell at probably around like 100 times, which seems really exaggerative, but it's actually not. We kind of like sat there and calculated it one day. And it was my very first like 14B. And I actually ended up red pointing it when it was like 10 degrees outside with snow coming down. So I'm not expecting you guys to have that level of commitment by any means, but I'm just kind of giving you guys an example of like where a lot of this experience or like a lot of this content is coming from. So this is kind of our goals. We are going to be talking about kind of a small subset in this entire clinic that has to do with splitting routes apart. In general, Art of the Project is about an 8-hour course that we take over a day or two, like during the Kraken Classics. But because we only have 1 hour, what I wanted to do was distill this thing down into probably one of the most beneficial aspects of project climbing that I could possibly think of. And if I'm talking too fast, just let me know, you guys. Very happy to slow down. This course is designed to help create a very systematic approach. So basically what I'm trying to do for you guys is give you a like kind of a checklist, you know how like pilots and those guys all have those, so that as you're going through projecting, you don't get lost in like the frustration or the emotional nightmare, or just like kind of give you like a, oh, okay, step 3 didn't work, so I'm going to go back to step 2 to refine it. And then you can like move on to step 3 and then hopefully end up getting your guys' goals achieved. So mental checklists, you guys, those are like some of the most important aspects of climbing that I can come up with. And that allows me not only to like stay safe when I'm doing like big walls or first ascents, but it also allows me to like keep like clear mind, so that I don't get like stuck in like that frustrated zone. And I think the frustrated zone can be really positive, but it can also be very detrimental to our red point process, because generally when people get frustrated, they quit. So from what I can understand, what everybody said in their introductions, they're not used to having to go continuously back to a climb. Is that correct? I wonder.
I haven't
Oh,
done it in years. It's been absolute ages.
yeah. Oh, okay, there we go. I can actually see your guys' faces. Yes, this is excellent. Sorry, it takes me a minute to get this all figured out. So, there are a lot of different aspects to projecting, though. It's not just, you know, oh, am I strong enough? It's like, am I mentally ready for this? And do I have like a good concept of what the climbing is going to be? Am I trained up for it? And training is not necessarily just doing pull-ups in a gym or working on your core. Training can be like memorization, like mentally ticking off like rests and things of that nature. And so that's why we are going to approach this with splitting a route apart, because I feel like in this process, when I take a route, which we will go more into detail of like what that means, but when I take a route and I put it into manageable chunks, that means I can clearly identify my weaknesses. I can identify my strengths, which are also important, but most importantly, I can identify like how to kind of like sew the whole thing together into one cohesive climb. So that just means like I can enter. How have you guys ever like entered like that flow state on a climb where like something has just been like messing with you, and then you'll climb it and you'll be like, well, that was like the easiest thing I've ever done. And then you'll be like, well, why didn't I do it like 8 times sooner or like 2 times sooner or something? Raise your hands if y'all have done that. Yeah. Okay. So it's like, yeah, why didn't I do this sooner? That was so easy. So what this systematic approach is supposed to do, and what I have actually experienced, is that it makes that flow state occur faster, if that makes sense. So instead of just like stumbling around in the dark, you end up having like a 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, okay, like I can send, or you know, oh, I need to work on this, and then you can get into red point mode and or finish your projects like in a timely manner instead of taking like 2 years to do it. So what is breaking a route apart? Does anybody have like kind of an idea or like a guess?
I guess just chunking it up into I don't know, protection or something like that. I guess with
That is,
bolts is the way I've tried it before.
you know what, you can call it protection as well, or then that would be like a good approach for trad climbing. But like with bolts or that kind of nature, it's a little trickier than just that. Generally with trad climbing, if you're breaking up into protection, like where you're placing cams, generally that'll be like in a good rest position or something like that, which makes sense. But in sport climbs, if you're like on the go and you're having to clip like a really hard bolt, like let's say it's a 10-bolt route, and bolt 3 is like just a nightmare bolt, like that's kind of tricky. What I like to think of breaking routes apart is like what makes sense to me. So in other words, let's say I have a 10-bolt route. And in that 10 bolts, I know that the first 3 bolts are something that I on-sighted, which means that's well within my climbing level. That means it's something that I don't really need to think about. So the first 3 bolts are like their own specific chunk. And if I fell on bolt 3, like at a crux, let's just say the crux is 4 through 6. If I fell on that crux, I would know that that is like a specific thing that I need to be like hyper aware of. And then from 6 to 10, let's just say I on-sighted that part again. And I know that that's going to be well within my climbing thing. I know that in this 10 bolt route, really it's just chunked down to bolts 4 through 6, right? So I would naturally end up having like a 3-section route. So instead of having this daunting like 100-foot route that's 10 bolts long, I really only have like, 2 bolts that are like stopping me, and then I have the other 3 bolts on top and the other like 4 bolts below that are just like super simple. Okay. So that's kind of like what I mean by manageable chunks. So let's go ahead and explore that a little bit. The process of doing this is about like creating a framework of understanding, and it will hopefully streamline your guys' experience for recalling and referencing your skill sets and certain aspects of the route. So a lot of like project climbing is pure memorization, and that's a big process of all of this. So in memorization, do people do really well with memorization in this? Just get some inner. No, not so much. So let's go and put this in like an experiential thing. Think back to like the hardest thing you've ever climbed. Do you remember what you did to climb it? Kinda. Like, so if you're feeling a little,
I'd actually say 100%. I think for my route memorization, it's like I tend to remember crux moves and what leads up to it. I tend to forget like sequences that I was able to move through really easily.
good. That's a good thing, because we can only memorize so many different things at a particular point in time. So being able to like know what's important and memorize it is less important than trying to memorize like what was your on-site ability. During this memorization process, you guys, or like actually just even breaking the route apart, it should help you guys identify like strengths and weaknesses pretty fast. And like that's also a part of the systematic approach. So one very important aspect of like breaking routes apart into manageable chunks is, so my personal approach, the way that I do it is, if I walk to a project, I try to on-site it every single time. Whether I actually have an intention to on-site it or not, it doesn't really matter. I will try to on-site it. And that way I know that like however far I on-site is something that I don't really need to remember, and that's my first chunk. And then I will go through and try to figure out like where I fell, how I fell, and I will immediately break my on-site mentality, and I will go directly into red point mentality, which is like hyper awareness. And that allows me to really streamline the process of memorizing like what is difficult, where the foot placements go, where my hand placements go, what my hips do, what my shoulder is doing to like allow me to like reach in and grab back or something like that. So that's a really important aspect of this as well. I can also use that as a means to like really go into that hyper awareness and identify like why I fell, why it was difficult, and like what I need to do to like identify mini cruxes for myself. And then once I get to the top of the route and I clip into the chains and I'm lowering down, I will double check all of those sections that I felt like were a little shaky. And the reason I do that is because not only does that allow me to kind of get like what I call like a free of mind approach to it, because I'm on top rope, right? I'm not thinking about clipping. I'm not thinking about the fear. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this or not, but like if you're placing gear or if you're going on a sport route, like your climbing as you're leading will be much different than your climbing as it would be on top rope. Raise your hand if you guys have experienced that. So really your climbing on top rope is how you would climb naturally, right? And then how you climb on lead is kind of like that one little like caveat of being like, or of being afraid, or like being aware of your like situation awareness. And so if you guys work with this process and like start to hone it in and make it your own, then how you climb on top rope will be how you climb on lead, which means that your projects will go faster and more importantly, they will go safer. Does that make sense? At least that's been my experience so far. So let's go ahead and talk about like the work and mental mapping. So when we're breaking a route apart, it is pretty essential to like make a mental map of that route. That means like identify your difficult sections, piece them together, and like work on doing reasonable links. If you guys have ever watched other pro climbers climb or even like really strong friends, they'll look at small progress as like momentous occasions. So like, oh my God, I made it like one move further on my high point. Like that becomes like a thing to celebrate. And that's also really important because that shows that you're creating progress in like your links. So some days I won't even try my route that I'm projecting. I will just go to the cruxes, full strength and full power and full endurance and just try to get good links on my cruxes. So if like I have a long crux that is 2 or 3 bolts, then I will try to make sure that I can climb that 2 or 3 bolts without falling. Like, and I will just train that all day long. And that's actually pretty reasonable to do. I know that like a lot of people have jobs, obviously, and so like if you only have like 2 days a week, that seems like kind of a heinous thing. But if you're project climbing, you know, I would recommend starting with your project first, and then get tired on that, and then go climb other things that are a lot easier in your level. That way you can like build endurance while tired. So my example here for my 10 bolt route that I was talking about a little bit earlier, yeah, like bolts 1 through 4, and you know that they're like 5, 10 climbing. Like I've identified in my mental map that bolts 1 through 4 are super simple for me. But then I know that bolts 5 through 7 are going to be like a V5 crux, and that's worth remembering because I had to try a little bit harder. And then I know that bolts 8 through 10 are back to 5, 10 climbing, and this is just like a made up one. But I just know that all I need to do is execute my movement, even if I'm tired, and then I should be able to like just hang on to the chains. And that's also like a really interesting aspect of breaking these routes into manageable chunks. Because if you guys have ever been like super smoked at the top of like a crux and you're like, oh, I got like 3 bolts left. And then you'll just hear somebody, or like you'll just be like, I'm too tired, and you'll call take. And then you'll think about it for a little bit and you're like, oh man, I wasn't even aware that I was like at the chains almost. I was just so tired that all I did was take. And then you're like, crap, I could have just made it to the top. And so that's like the interesting part about the mental mapping is that once you go through your sections, your brain will automatically blank whatever is underneath you and just focus on what's above you. And that's actually pretty cool because it allows you guys to like reset, relax, and then reassess like where you're at. And then also hopefully give you that extra try hard to get to the chain. Does that make sense? Excellent, excellent. Okay, so the execution. So during a red point attempt, you guys will notice that like it's way different than on-sighting. You should feel much more relaxed. You should have zero fear when it comes down to runouts between bolts or runouts between. Well, okay, so I'm gonna say trad is like a whole different beast when it comes down to this. Like some of these principles apply, but like let's just say you're on a trad route and you have everything memorized and you're still like in that one placement that will like deck you onto a ledge, you should always be afraid of that. You should always be aware of that and always a little bit like fearful of like hitting things. But in context of like a sport climb, you know, you should be relaxed, you should be excited, you should be focused, and that's also like a huge aspect of this. Is you've gone through your mental maps, you've done your routine to like get your shoes on correctly. You should have like a mental psych that puts you in that mode of being like, yeah, I'm gonna get this done. An important factor to remember as well is like when you are going in a red point, naturally you will climb faster because you know what you're doing. And so it's really, really, really crucial to remember to rest and like climb appropriately for whatever is going on in that situation. Because a lot of people like to sprint to the chains because they feel good or anything else like that. and then they climb a little unnaturally, and then their endurance blows out, and then they like end up punting like either at the chains or like a bolt or two below it, and it's just super frustrating. So remembering to consistently recover, rest, and refocus is super important. The other thing too is, you know, because we have memorization at such a high key level for projecting, especially when it comes down to going through those sections, if you are climbing and like, let's just say your foot pops and you have to like move your foot to a different spot, a lot of times people will like absolutely let that throw them off of their red point, and then they'll end up, oh, there's a cute kitten like that. That's good. A lot of people will let that throw them off, and then they'll ultimately end up like punting or doing something like that. Improvisation in climbing is really important because if you get thrown off of your sequence, you should be able to recoup and remove and like move on from it. Okay, awesome. It's like a refocusing and charge on kind of thing. So there's a couple of tips and tricks. These are like 3 of the main things that I find really important. And part of the fun of climbing is the frustration, especially with red point climbing. Like on-sighting, I mean, you only get one chance to on-site, so it's kind of like an immediate like, ah, dang it, and then you like move on to the next one. Red pointing though, once you've decided to emotionally invest into something and then you keep falling or having issues or those kinds of different things, it gets really frustrating very quickly. But it's super important to remember that even in those moments, those are part of the fun. Red pointing is part of a self-discovery and cultivating your own style. So the tips and the concept of what I'm talking about right now is for you guys to create a style that works for you. I'm just giving you kind of like the framework, like the lattice structure to kind of work with it. And then you can add on like your own personalities and your own approaches that you find important or that work for you. And then the last part is once you guys are done on-sighting something, I cannot stress it enough. Hyper awareness of what you're doing and like what gets you through things is what will make your projecting more interesting and also more streamlined. So if you're like always in on-site mode, I don't know, like everybody raise your hand if you've done this, but like you get to the top of a route, you come back down and you try it your second try, and you're like, I have no idea what I did. And I've done that a lot. Has anyone else done that? Yeah. So like your on-site brain is still working the whole time, which means, you know, you've blown your on-site attempts. So no matter how you look at it, this route has become something that you have to red point if you want to do that route as a project. Which means why would you continuously on-site a route and have no knowledge or memory of it, only to increase the time that it takes to try to do it projecting? Because then your second go just turns into memorization. Okay. All right. So what I want to do right now, you guys, is that's kind of the end of this part. What I would like to do is have everybody go ahead and unmute themselves. I'm not sure. Oh, I'm not sure if anybody had any questions or anything, but I would kind of like to go through like everybody's experiences, and more importantly, like what resonated with them and what didn't. So go ahead.
The one thing that I immediately wrote down was the mentioning of coming back down on top rope and how that's more your natural climbing. Because I've definitely noticed on some of the sketchier routes, it's I feel like a much different climber, and trying to like close that gap, I think is something I should really be focusing on when figuring out beta and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So I think this is something that I'd really like to address as well. Everybody thinks that like top roping things is like a weakness. And my big goal during the Kraken Classic series is to basically negate that. I top rope all the time. It's awesome. Like we all know how to lead. We've all been terrified over gear. We've all been terrified over bouldering. Like it doesn't matter. Like, oh, bouldering, you don't have to rope. But we've all been terrified over bolts is what I meant to say. And so it's like, if I can come down and top rope something and ultimately achieve like my higher potential as a red point, then why wouldn't I do that? Like
That's TR is the only way that like I've been doing it lately lately I've been on a bit of a break, but I TR things and take my entire rack up with me, and I plug the
Yeah.
gear, and then we leave the gear, and my partner goes up it and checks it. So I place it on TR going up, maybe dragging another rope, and then
Yep.
lower back down, and I check it, and then the partner goes back up and does that look, and then that gets us to the point where we're on the with the people that I've been climbing with most recently. It's then we're all on the same page, and we trust each other's placements at that point. It's like I know I've got friends with decades of of Big Wall trad that it's I love getting those guys out because it's the time of going, yeah, you blew that. That shouldn't have been that shouldn't have been a 0.75. That should have been a 1. Like, that's you totally
Yeah.
jacked it because it's when I do that on lead, I'm at that point where I'm so having such a long history of bouldering in sport. Being above being on the sharp end doesn't bother me, and I'm climbing trad stuff that's well within my skill set. So I love going in TR and that stuff every day just for that reason.
Yeah. And like I said, it's just like, it's one of those things where, all these routes that are going up, like especially if it's like a trad route, like one of the hardest ones I've done that I put up as a first ascent was a 14 ARX. And like, I didn't do that from the ground up. That would be nuts. like there's just, it would just be like, you're just asking for death. So I'm a big proponent of top roping and like figuring things out and like understanding them. And then, obviously I don't turn around and look, oh yeah, I let it. It's like, no, really honest about what I do. So it's like, as long as you guys are honest about your process, then like anything's free game. Like, man, people, I mean, even like highball boulders, people working on micro track consistently. So it's one of those things where like that is a huge part of this process as well, which is also a part of the breaking things into manageable chunks. Because if you're top roping, you can really focus on what works where, what you need to do. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, cool. Well then, I'm gonna go ahead and start asking you guys questions so that we can go ahead and do this. What I would like now is we're gonna go ahead and talk about like goals and concepts and things that have been like working as blocks for you guys on like your projecting. And so I'm gonna go ahead and start with Luke, because you're at the top of my list.
I think really, and I think this is the big question I've got every day. It's mental. Like I know, again, being on a break beyond COVID, right? I get out of my head on fitness, and I just like I'm flailing on stuff that has been in my wheelhouse for years. Like I walk up to it, to my favorite 12B in the red and can't get 4 bolts off the ground. And it's just in my head right now. And it's like, and I haven't worked around the coping mechanism of that. And I think it's probably just to break it down. Can I get to, can I be comfortable at getting 2 bolt 4 is what I've got to do, but I'm just not, I haven't had enough frequency to getting out right now to test that theory.
Okay. That's a big part of the red pointing process, is recognizing like where you're at as opposed to like where you were. So, our climbing ability as humans, depending on situations and shenanigans that are going on, like especially now, with COVID and everything, like it's all predisposed to like what's happening. So me remembering like how strong I was like a few years ago doesn't really do me any good. And so, like, let's just say in that scenario that you're talking about, this favorite 12B that you used to crush back in the day, like, run laps on, it's difficult now. It's important to recognize that. And so a great approach to that is to be breaking that 12B back down into what are manageable chunks for me to be doing. So for example, you can get 4 bolts up, you can get 4 bolts up. So just pull through those 4 bolts, get to the 4th bolt, and then just start trying to get 6 bolts up. And then try going to, I don't know how many bolts it is, but it's one of those things where it's, what you can do, so work on what you can't do. And that's like part of that like immediate accessing of like what weaknesses are, because projecting is basically finding out what you suck at and then make it so you don't suck at it anymore. That's basically out of the project down into like one tiny like sentence. Do you think that that might help you like approach that a little bit differently, or
Oh yeah, it's
like
yeah,
work with the mental side of it?
yeah, it's that, and I think I've got a hard time constraints lately, so that's not helping. But that's
No, totally. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, Kate, let's go ahead and hear from you.
Hang on, I'm challenged with unmuting sometimes. Um, it's focusing on getting out of your comfort zone and doing something other than what you're used to doing, because you can always go to the same climbs or whatever and have your comfort level, and actually setting the goal to not just setting the goal to climb something bigger, but to actually put the things in place to make getting to that goal, because I can sit and tell you, I'm going to go do blah, 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 and then not put in the steps to get there. So, the whole thing about setting goals is very helpful, because you got to set the smaller goals in order to get that bigger one. So that's kind of my challenge.
Okay. So a big part of like the longer class that we do about this, we do talk about goal setting and like just the importance of it. So real fast, everybody, does everybody know kind of like there's no proper way to really set goals, but like the goal setting strategy that allows you to go step by step to like build your pyramid up?
Not in detail.
Okay. So this is kind of like a tried and true thing, and I learned this from like the Obstacles Way and a few other different things. So yeah, I read a lot of self-help books. Go figure. So basically, goal setting is taking like a really broad, vague topic, and that's like your overall long-term goal. And then your next shorter term goal, if you're thinking about this as like a big umbrella, your next goal that's a little bit more understandable, a little more defined, goes a little bit underneath it. And then your actual goal that you can take your first step to achieve your larger goal goes underneath that. So for example, one of my big goals in life is to put up a 515 big wall. Like that's a goal. Now, that doesn't really exist yet. And so that is just like this amorphous blob that's kind of like sitting in the back of my mind that I wake up to every day. But I can't really define it because it doesn't exist. However, if I chunk that down and in, I know for a fact that like if I want to achieve this goal, then I need to climb 515. So then my medium term goal, like right now I climb like 14C D. And so I know that if I want to climb 515, then I need to start like training for that. So I go ahead and pick on my medium term goal in the next 5 years, a bunch of different random like 515s that I could go ahead and work towards. However, because I only climb 514C or D, depending on like the area, it doesn't really matter. But because I only know that I climb that hard, that's going to go into like a smaller subset, which means I need to train that particular category more so that I can like make the next step up and then the next step up. So like my 6-month goal right now is to climb a route called Kryptonite, which is a 14 CD. And then it's also to finish a project that I wanted to do called The Witcher, which is a 14D, maybe a 15A, I don't know. And then another goal is to just train a bunch of 514B. So I have an immediate step that I can do in the next 6 months to a year that will allow me to reach into my middle term goal, which then will allow me to reach into my more vague amorphous goal. Does that kind of help define like how at least we look at goal setting within the context of this class?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Awesome. So hey, for example, what's really cool though is when you have like these incremental defined and determined steps to like reach your bigger goal, then what happens is like you are capable of being like, oh, today's Monday. Okay, so I know that I need to be working on my core because I want to go do like the Teton Ridge Traverse, or I want to go do the nose on El Cap, or whatever your major goal is. you're like, I need to work on this subset of group of things. Like I need to work on my trad skills. Okay, well, if I'm gonna work on my trad skills, where am I gonna go climbing? Oh, I'm gonna go climbing here. Or sport skills, I'm gonna go climbing here. Or, power or whatever you need to do. Does that kind of help define a little bit for like motivation and like how to consistently keep ticking off the things? Kate?
Yes, that's
Oh,
great. Thank you.
does that kind of help a little bit, or?
Yeah, it does. Just sometimes you just need to hear how other people look at it, and then gives you clarity. So thank you.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and look at your goal. What is your goal?
My goal is to it's ice climbing related, and it's actually getting out of my going and doing a multi-pitch ice climb down in Uray County. It just
Okay.
depends on who I go with, which one it is. So, but I have to take the steps to get there, which I have to start now, because it's all one's built on the other. So I just have to come up with the first steps to get to my big goal, so that you know what I mean? I just need to just reverse my thinking. So,
Perfect. Okay. And you guys, you all have my sorry. You guys have my email address. So if something pops up, feel free to email me. I'm happy to like point in directions and things like that if you guys would like to after this clinic. Like you have access to that if you feel like it. Okay. Let's go ahead and go with John.
Yeah,
Where are you at with things?
I'd really appreciate everything you've been saying. In particular, breaking down the goals into actionable items that you can schedule. And then the top roping was huge for me too, because when I was starting out, that's kind of how I viewed it. And I shouldn't view it so much as a crutch or starting over, but that's a good way to train. At this point, I just need to get back into it. I'm kind of where Luke is in terms of just having been busy and out of it for a while, and then COVID interruptions and that kind of thing.
Global pandemics just ruining everything for us. Yeah, so I'm gonna share a little bit. So I was climbing the Frankenjura, and that's over in Germany, and this is where my whole top rope is actually kind of an important tool that we have. It's like building a house without a hammer, basically. And it's like, cool, you have like a stapler, enjoy. But I was in Germany, and I was like really freaked out because they bolt very sparingly there, and I was on this route that basically like if you blow the crux, you hit the ground.
Wow.
And I couldn't quite do it, and I was like taking a whip like halfway in between, so I wasn't hitting the ground. But I do remember I got up to the bolt at one point, and I was so like freaked out that I was reaching up to like grab the draw. And I had some like German dude with a beer in his hand being like, "Make the clip or take the whip."
It puts it in perspective, yeah.
Well, it does, but the interesting thing is like that basically made me turn around and go, "That is the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my entire life." It's really easy to be the dude with a beer on the ground telling somebody to like
yeah.
clip when you're not. And I was like, "Wow, that's really interesting. This is my own life.
Oh,
I
and
should
make your own
probably go."
decisions on it, yeah.
Exactly. And so that's why I think sometimes like that's one of my most important aspects of this class is being like, top roping is a tool. Use it as a tool. Like it doesn't show weakness, or it's not some stupid like toxic thing. It's like, dude, be smart about it. Like if I can top rope something and send it in 2 goes, or if I'm gonna spend 2 years on something because I didn't top rope it, who's the
Got
idiot?
it. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's see. Ryan, let's go ahead and hear from you. I'm curious what you're at.
Like a local factoid real quick about the whole top roping thing. There's a
Yes, sir.
boulder problem nearby that John Gill put a top rope on to like rehearse the top out. So if anybody ever gives you crap about top roping, you just tell them that. I guess for me, like, because I'm coming from trad where you kind of like don't fall much because I climb like easy and moderate stuff. So one thing for me is kind of like the just the mental shift and how you're kind of like interacting with your partner. I guess for me doing sports stuff and like getting into like red pointing a little bit. One thing that's hard for me is to sort of like balance the demands that I have to try to learn things the way I want to learn them versus like trying my belayer's patience. You know what I mean? Like on a trad route, it's like if you take
Ah,
10 minutes to pull a move, you're doing it because you can't fall, Whereas like on a sport climb, there's a part of me that like doesn't want to impose on my belayer and make him stand there for 10 minutes while I decide how I want to like put my left foot on this one hold, or whatever.
um, so okay, so this is actually, I love these questions or I love these statements because this is actually like we're really hitting on way more of art of the project than I thought we were going to be able to. One of the most fundamental aspects of red pointing and projecting is having a good partner. And I'm not saying if your partner is impatient and doesn't want to like hang out with you while you do that kind of stuff, they're a bad climbing partner. They're just not a good climbing partner for projecting. That would be I'm going to go on site with this climbing partner, but I'm going to have like a person that's like interested in my growth, or more importantly, at least patient with my growth. For example, my wife, she originally climbed like 11B like a year ago. And then I started putting up top ropes on 13s for her because, well, A, they were close to my projects, and B, like she had the capability to do that. So she would top rope a 513 for 2.5 hours. I would sit on the rope for 2.5 hours while she would literally for 30 minutes like try to figure out how to put her foot on something. But I was okay with it because, ultimately we had a deal where I would be able to sit for 2 hours trying to figure out my project. So we were like really good at supporting each other on that kind of thing. And so like it doesn't have to be your wife, obviously. I have other climbing partners that are men that do the same thing. Like we'll sit there and be like, all right, well, today is going to be a long day of projecting. So grab a book and grab a gree and you can read while I sit on this rope for an hour and a half. And that's totally viable too, by the way. I do that all the time. I have gotten so much smarter with reading. It's great. But what I think is really a good idea is to really, really tell your partners when you go out for that day what to expect. Because nobody can be pissy if you're like, hey, I want to go work on my project and I might literally spend 10 minutes trying to figure out how to put my foot on something. And then if they're like okay with it and they're savvy for it, then like you're set. Like it doesn't matter. You can spend however long you want doing that, as long as you give it back to them as well. So that's a really great way to navigate that and to not feel bad, because honestly, it's your climbing experience, not theirs. And so if you spending 10 minutes figuring out how to put your foot on that hold gets you through the route on the next go, your climbing partner is going to be way more psyched than if you just spent 1 minute being like, I guess that'll work. And then you spend the next 5 days working on the same project.
Right. Makes sense.
Does that kind of help alleviate a little bit of that thought process?
Yeah, for sure.
It's just about like creating like expectations in which you are climbing with whomever you're climbing with. Like, pretty much anybody is willing to do anything as long as they know what they're getting themselves into.
Right.
And I think that that's like a really big thing that we don't communicate with people, where it's like, we're going climbing today, and everybody thinks that they're going to be getting like 30 pitches in, and like your climbing partner gets like 2 pitches in, they're like, I don't want to climb anymore. And you're like, yeah, but we were going to go climb today. So it's really good to be like, these are my goals, these are my intentions, and this is what I want to execute today. And like, if you're on board, you're on board. And if you're not, you're not. And then I will happily do whatever you want me to do for you. So like, you can actually have partners where they're like wanting to get massive amounts of pitches in because it's all time, right? It's relative on that. And so like you guys spending 3 hours doing like 5 pitches is the same as you spending like 3 hours working on one move. So I think that's a really positive way, because I used to feel really guilty about that stuff too. And then I was like, man, why? It's all climbing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is there anything else that you're thinking?
I think that was the main thing. Thanks. That was very helpful.
Does that help?
Yeah, a lot.
Let's see. Who have I not heard from yet? Michael. Let's hear from you.
I guess I have a question about time management, but sort of specifically, I have a project I want to send that I have to travel a fairly extensive amount to. And I mean, I can't stay for a very long time because of, other obligations. How do you manage your time? Because, like, I also want to climb other stuff there, and you have conflicting sort of wants and needs, and how do you optimize that sort of thing?
Um, wow. Okay. So, hmm. When is this like a local crag for you?
No, this
Okay.
there's a flight involved, and it's something that I've looked at. I'm like, oh, I can definitely send this. And then, like, last time we got rained out like 30 minutes into the session. So,
Yeah.
shit happens. But it occurs to me that, like, if I ever want to travel or there's a crag and I see something I want to project at, I also don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to spend my entire time there, but I also want to spend some time trying something hard.
Okay, so there's a couple of ways to approach that. One of the ways is if you know what the climb is, you can do research on it prior. Because like if you know that you're gonna project something, you're probably not gonna on-site it. Like let's be very honest with ourselves. You can do research on it and see like what the cruxes are like, or like kind of get the most base knowledge that you can. And if you're a certain time period out, you can specifically train for it. So that means like hangboarding. If it's like you know that it's going to be really crimpy, you can go ahead and work endurance crimping in the gym. Or I mean, maybe not with COVID, but but if you know it's like a crack climb, you can be focused on like a specific size that will help you get through that. Or if there's like different aspects of the route that you know that you're going to have to deal with, then you can train those different things so that you're at like a higher plateau than where you would be if you just like walked in without any knowledge whatsoever. Um, However, in terms of how I do time management and those kinds of things, I'm kind of poor at it because I get really obsessive, but I've always tried to instill a rule that like I will give something 5 goes. And if I'm not having fun on it still after, if I'm not having fun at it, like with it on 5 goes, then I'll walk away from it. However, I blow that out of the water all the time because it's like at 5 goes, I'm like, oh, I'm not having fun, but I really want to like get this as a red point while I'm on my trip, like especially when I'm overseas. And so I usually put it into a category of like, am I going to well, I mean, am I going to go for broke on it or not, really, is what it comes down to. And generally, I like to go for broke. So I'll leave empty handed a lot of the times, but those like 1% times that I don't leave empty handed, I'm like really psyched on. And that kind of keeps me going. And that's like doing something where you put things into like your memory bank of like what makes you feel good and what does not make you feel good. So like let's just say you're doing like a 13A project or a 13B project or something like that. Are you going to feel better by putting your time, energy, and effort into trying to do that and potentially walking away without it? Or are you going to feel good by just doing a bunch of like endurance pitches on like 13 or like on like 11s and 12s? So that's kind of how I usually like weigh it out.
All right, that helps put things in perspective.
It's just choices. I mean,
Yeah.
really, they're all just choices. And it's like what is going to give you a higher sense of satisfaction. And honestly, sometimes it really is like just leaving the crag empty handed and being like, well, that was a really cool trip. I mean, I could have done something different, but I didn't. So here we are.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit. Let's see, Eric, I haven't heard from you yet, and I haven't heard from Jason. So I'm gonna go with Eric first.
Yeah, so a lot of what you've been saying has really resonated with me. So thanks for doing this. This is a pretty cool opportunity in spite of COVID. Um, I think one thing that you mentioned that uh, I guess we haven't really talked about yet, but I very much identify with is like being able to kind of harness your frustration and have fun with it, because I feel like that's honestly probably what really gets in my way of projecting things, where I'll try it once, twice, maybe 3 times, and I'll just be like, you know, fuck, like this feels so far away from sending, like I don't want to do it. And it just like kind of takes all the fun out, just because I feel so frustrated, instead of like actually being able to like sit down with the process and kind of enjoy it.
So a huge aspect of that, and this is like the quickest trick that I can give you. Stop asking why I can't do it, but ask how can I do it. And what that will do is take that frustration and turn it into something that's productive. So if you ask why am I so weak, the answer is, or why I can't do this project, it's like, oh, I'm weak, and it feels like there's nothing you can do about that. But if it's like, how can I do this project? It's like, well, my fingers aren't strong enough to hold onto this hold, so I need to train my fingers, and it gives you like a productive step-by-step process to get towards finishing your project. Because remember, these things aren't things that we're going to do in like 2 days. This is stuff that we're going to do over the course of time, which will make us better climbers in the long run. Nobody likes to hear this, but like there is no silver bullet. Like nothing about this clinic will make you guys 514 climbers tomorrow. But what it hopefully could do is it like help you guys work towards 514 in the course of 5 years. And so instead of that's how I generally navigate the frustration part of it. And sometimes I don't win. Sometimes I'm just like, yeah, all right, I lost the mental battle today. But I'll wake up the next day and be like, all right, well, back at it. And so it's really just a big thing about grinding. And to grind, you have to ask how and not why. Because if you keep like consistently asking why am I doing this, then you shouldn't be doing it. But if you're like, how can I get this done? Then that is like a healthy, productive process. I hope that probably is like the most clutch key thing that I think I've ever learned in all of this is not why, but how. And I have I sent you guys my website on there, and I actually go into that concept a little bit more, like in a personal blog that talks about the process of why and how, and like how to move forward through that. So if you guys want to like more in depth on that one, please feel free to reference that and then email me any questions you have. Jason, let's hear from you because I gotta wrap it.
I'll be quick because I actually have to jump to another meeting. But I just wanted to say that
Sorry.
the thing that really resonated with me was the whole thing about sort of embracing the frustration and really coming. I mean, it's obviously it's what projecting is, but like I don't really come back. I'll probably do, like you said, like 5 goes in a day, and that's okay. And I might come back a couple times to the same problem, but there gets to be a point where I'm probably like really not trying that many times, and so I think I really need to, in establishing my goals for next year, like I really want to take a more long-term outlook at, hey, it's okay if I have to come back to this, 10 times, and maybe I'll take the frustration in small doses, but I definitely like to sort of enjoy the process of failing more on the path to hopefully succeeding.
Well, yeah, I think it's the same thing that I told Eric. Like honestly, if you guys are feeling frustrated on things, ask how, not why, and that will give you incremental determined efforts that will make sense. So things that you can work on. I mean, projecting is really just the process of identifying all the things we suck at and trying to make it so that we suck at them more. And like that's how you end up sending for the most part. And I mean, it's a lot of work, you guys. Like that's the thing about projecting is it's so much work that I had to come up with a mental framework so that I could make it less work because I'm the laziest human being you guys will ever meet. And so it's like, yeah, I'm so lazy that I had to create a system that I could be lazy in. I don't know. that's like the easiest way of putting it. Okay, so really fast, I did get a question about comfort zones. And I'm gonna do this really fast for you, Jason, so that you can kind of get one last little glimpse and feel free to drop out when you need to. Comfort zones are like one of the most fascinating things. They keep us safe, they keep us happy, they keep us warm, but they also stifle all growth. So how to break out of comfort zones is to first off acknowledge if you are in one or if you are not in one. Fear is generally a really good example of when you're in a comfort zone or breaking out of one. However, having awareness of what you're doing is really important as well. So for example, if you're like a 5'10" climber trying to like free the nose in a day and you're scared out of your mind, you probably should be, and you should not be doing that because that's not your experiential level. However, if you're working on a project and you're afraid of something like a bolt or a fall that is perfectly safe, that is a perfect opportunity to expand your comfort zone and get out of it, which means take the fall, or more importantly, like recognize it for what it is and like find like a higher level of awareness. So ask yourselves proper questions, and that is how you expand and break out of your comfort zone. So one of the proper ways of asking a question, if I'm afraid over a piece of gear, I go, is the gear safe? Yes. Is the gear like a bolt? Probably. Is the rock going to break? No. Am I going to hit any ledges? No. Am I going to hit the ground? No. If I can answer all those questions properly and I don't have any like threat to my life and or like my health, aka broken backs, legs, anything else like that, then I can answer it confidently for myself, then I will go ahead and be like, okay, well, I'm just being afraid right now because I'm out of my comfort zone. Keep pushing. However, if I do identify or if I answer no to any of those questions in that scenario, then I have to reassess what's going on. Am I actually in danger? Because if I am, then that's a proper comfort zone to have. How can I make it so that I can push past it safely? So that's a really important aspect as well. So comfort zones, they're these happy little places that we get to exist in, and they keep us from training, they keep us from climbing, they keep us from attaining our goals because we're afraid of failure or anything else like that. But I get bad news for you guys. Y'all chose a sport that basically is 99% failure, 1% winning. So we fail all the time. And so I think it's just really important for us to understand that like there really is no failing. There's just learning and growing and progressing past whatever potential we think we have. Okay? Does that help a little bit? Awesome. Well, we are at 11:37. I think that is our hour that we have for this. So again, I'd like to thank the American Alpine Club for at least organizing all of this stuff. This actually went way better than I thought. Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
It's been great getting to talk to another climber.
Yeah, and lots of good takeaways.
For sure.
Do you guys feel like you're gonna go ahead and go to your crags and go to your projects and like maybe utilize some of this information to just see if you can push that next level?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I would like to also take this opportunity again to say, hey, you guys are more than welcome to hit me up on Instagram or email or whatever contact that you guys may have if you have any questions. I do post like core workouts and things like that for people that are trying to like strengthen up and things of that nature. So just let me know, and I'm happy to go ahead and like involve you guys in that. Because normally I would give you guys my core workout that I do, but we only had an hour. So yeah, just hit me up when you guys need something if you have any questions, and I'll try to respond to you like in a timely manner. All right.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you guys so much, and it was a pleasure to see you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Good luck out there, you guys.
Thanks.
See ya.